Yeah, welcome everybody to our Adjusting to Change workshop series here in 2023 with the Sacred Self-Healing Community. My name is Jona Bryndis, you all know this, and today we have an out of the scheduled themes topic, namely, do aliens exist? So just real quick up front, this is not a lecture. This is designed as a discussion Q&A. So we will talk about your questions. I have not received any submitted questions up front. So how this webinar works or how it develops here and how far we can go with things, it largely depends on your questions. It's important for you to note because I have decided that in addition to those scheduled workshops that we have about self-mastery, how to master yourself, basically your senses, your thinking and your willing, your relationships, goals, etc. I want to pick up on topics that come into our attention through the media. So the alien topic, this is something that I have been talking about for many years and also predicting it now for this time frame, for this time period to come forward. And it is. Yes, we are recording, and this session takes place here in this webinar format because we are discussing things that I don't normally discuss publicly. So here you see a little bit of an outline. I would like to get started with your questions on this huge topic, and then I will give a little bit of background and a little bit of context for all of us to discuss and perhaps also maybe come to a conclusion for ourselves. Yes, I'm not going to tell you this is the only truth. I'm going to share with you what I see and what I have seen. And I hope that you do the same with us. Yes, okay, so let's start right there. Linda's texting in the chat here. This is a new topic for me, so I have no questions, only interest. All right, so thank you for sharing this. It almost catches me off guard because it's a very old topic for me. Can I see your guys' hands? Who of you has never really thought about that? Never really thought about aliens, whether aliens exist, if they exist, what they would look like, or what they would do. Okay. It probably has to do with your choice of movies and books. Because if you just go with the normal mainstream agenda nowadays, it's pretty much impossible not to be inculcated with some kind of idea that there are aliens out there. Even if you look at those superhero movies, none of those newer Marvel and DC movies take place just on the planet Earth. Then you throw in Star Wars, Star Trek, this science fiction genre, and you see it's along with all the computer games or the gaming world that is very clear on the topic of other worlds existing and other civilizations being there, mostly I would say in the context of war. So some kind of alien attack or some kind of abduction or takeover or something like that. That's just, I think, what most of us can perceive just by watching movies, reading books nowadays that have some kind of popularity. So congratulations, Linda, if you haven't really watched these movies. Most of them are pretty graphic and carry on the apocalyptic theme. What could be other reasons for us to never have really thought about the topic of aliens? Those of you who not raised a hand, yeah, what are some of the thoughts that you have around aliens? Let me give you a little bit of an intro for myself. So personally, I was very interested in science fiction literature at a very early stage. Some of these science fiction authors, the classic science fiction authors, are among my favorite authors. So for me, science fiction and the technological, but also the ethical aspect of that has always been of just interest. It's a quirk of mine. I'm a huge Star Trek fan. Yeah, I've watched all spin-offs, all episodes, at least 3 times. And I find Star Trek very inspiring because it talks about really social issues that we have nowadays, but in context with sort of the greater vision of a galaxy with different races and so forth. And obviously there's a constant discussion about infringement, which has shaped some of my ethics and integrity as an energy healer as well. Yeah, so understanding that interfering and infringing in somebody else's evolutionary process leads you to taking on part of that karma, but also pushes others into a direction that is maybe not beneficial for them. This is coming from me as someone who believes in higher power. So higher power needs to be discussed in the whole context of the alien discussion, because if there is a pure materialistic perspective on the universe, yeah, where humanoids or humans and other species are merely just a randomized clashing of atoms and cells, well then you will probably recognize that. Hang on a second, guys. I need to get the dogs inside. They're barking too much. Hang on, just 1 second. Okay, sorry. That got me very distracted. They were jumping around and barking at everything that was moving. Yeah, so for me, higher power is not a contradiction to the development of life in other places. Well, so for me, higher power does not just include the planet Earth, it includes the universe, and therefore I don't have a contradiction there, but a lot of people do. So let's discuss this first, if you don't have any concrete questions. In the past, yes, and we will have to define alien, Cindy, of course. That's extremely important. I would like to ask you guys not to write me these really long chats, guys. I can't read this while I'm talking, okay? So can you please turn on your microphones? You guys are all We all have open mic lines and talk. This is a discussion. This is not me reading your questions and commenting, because everybody needs to hear the question. Thank you. You have like science fiction as well, Diana? Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to say
science fiction movies.
Always
Yeah.
always love science fiction. Any science fiction movie, you know, I'm there, just love it.
Same.
But I just think that we can't be alone in the universe. That's the way I think about it. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's I mean, you know, even if you don't believe in higher power, right? You know, it's something that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, if you have just a little bit of understanding of biology, physics, and so forth, you know, then it makes a lot of sense that if the very same conditions are met, that it's the possibility of some kind of life forms, yeah, some kind of life forms develop there. But the affinity, I want to talk about the affinity real quick, Diana. So you said you've always liked science fiction. Was it like for me as a kid already, like, you know, like just being like really interested in outer worldly things that are not from, you know, that you don't see every day or that you are familiar with?
Well, yeah, look, I can remember as a kid loving I Dream of Jeannie. That's not really fun, you know.
But that's
and
always
about,
also the magical part. That's also the magical part, right?
you know, ISIS, and there was a show, you know, I don't know, I can't remember, I just went Almighty ISIS or something, you know, anything like that, Wonder Woman. But yeah, no, that's sort of as far back. But I apparently I used to dance in front of the TV to I Dream of Jeannie. And so, yeah, no, but just I don't know, I just always had an interest. Just love it. I can't handle horror, but when it comes to science fiction, you know, I'm there. Interesting.
So what I just heard in what you said, Diana, is also that you like the magical part, the fantastical part about it. So in literature, you know, science fiction, fantasy, yeah, even in the gaming world or some other libraries and so forth, that's a standing genre. They go together, science fiction and fantasy. Yeah, so it's quite common that people who are open for the imagination of something that is different from what you know, yeah, that they like this kind of genre. I think from a psychological point of view, that's the reason why we are interested in that. Humans have always been interested in exploring and discovering what's outside their own boundaries. It's part of this spark that we have, this striving for you know, more, for knowing more, for well, exploring. Yeah, this is it's part of the human nature. Yeah. So before we go and try to define aliens, which obviously isn't possible in a way that we could have proof or studies or anything like that. Not at this point here in 2023. But before we do that, let's maybe define what is human. Yeah, what is human in your guys' view? What defines us as humans?
That's where I was kind of going with defining the alien question. Was we as humans are multidimensional beings, so wouldn't it be reasonable to say that if there were aliens, they would be multidimensional as well?
All right, before we can jump to conclusions, we have to look at the first statement that you made. You said because we humans are multidimensional beings. So you will find that 90% of people at least are going to contradict that. Okay, so let's talk about that first.
Okay.
My question was, what defines us as humans? And your answer was being multidimensional. Okay, so is that so? Let's start simple, guys. We need to form a really good discipline about how we are thinking, because how we are thinking is producing our thoughts. And the thoughts that we are thinking, 90% of our thoughts are repetitive thoughts. They form thought structures, and these thought structures form beliefs. Okay, so if we want to be in charge of our mental constructs and our beliefs, conscious or unconscious, we need to be very clear about that sort of chain of commands here. Yeah, like where did this thought come from? Where did that come from? And who in me or what in me thought this? Okay. And the easiest way to build this discipline is to actually do this a bit like a stickler. Okay, you ask yourself, well, okay, what's the question? The question is, what defines me as a human? Okay, so you go super basic, all right, and then you build a construct. Yeah, so you take one statement that you can answer for sure, yeah, where you know that is true. Yeah, guys, what defines us as humans that you know is true?
Our physical bodies.
Yeah.
Yeah, but animals have human physical bodies too. It's not a good enough answer. What defines us as humans? What's our characteristic as humans? Say in comparison to animals or insects or plants or rocks.
Our level of consciousness
Say that again,
compared
Diana.
to
We
like
have
a level of consciousness compared
okay.
to animals or insects or
Okay. There clearly is something that we can feel ourselves. We can note this ourselves, right? We don't have to be biologists to note that. There's a higher, at least a higher potential in consciousness in humans compared to most other life forms here on the planet that we know of. Yeah? Let's stay neutral, that we know of. I'm just not leading what I'm saying. I'm being a scientist right now. I'm helping you guys to have a clear mind. Okay, so you answer or approach questions with the foundation of what you know is true. Yeah. So we have a body. Yes, but so does many other life forms. We have emotions. We have cognitive function, and we seem to have a consciousness about all that. So there's a consciousness that can experience the body, experience the emotions, and experience the thoughts. And that's what we call consciousness. And on top of that, we also have an ability to tune into something that goes beyond ourselves. That's what we call higher consciousness. We can have abstract thinking. We can have imagination. We can have something like intuition. Yeah, let's be clear here to differentiate. Intuition is something different from instinct. Instinct is pre-programmed. Yeah. All animal species, for example, have instincts. But intuition is slightly different. Although many of the people in the New Age scene are not very clear about that, intuition is actually at the lower level of our higher perception. Okay, that is at the lower level because your intuition isn't always leading you, say, toward your highest good, does it now? Yeah, and then there's the problem with us recognizing this inner guidance that is popping out through intuition, but that can also be blocked by our subconsciousness, say inner child and trauma and things like that. That can be blocked. That's not our higher perception yet, but this is all part of being human. Humans are very diverse when it comes to the area of how they perceive, how they process, and also how they express their inner world. So the higher developed the species, yeah, the more interaction you will see. Yeah, so one of the lowest developed living organisms, if we just count the ones with organelles, with animal cells, with animal organelles, so sorry, like an amoeba, like a one-celler, a protozoa, has a very simplistic interaction with the environment that they're in. Does anybody happen to know what that interaction is based on? Obviously, they have no eyes, no ears, and none of these senses. They have one sense, and they have two reactions. The only sense they have is if something is toxic or not. Or formulated the other way around, if they can eat something or not. That's a sort of a biochemical sense. That's the only thing they can discern, the only sense they have, and the only reactions that they have with this is moving towards something or moving away from something. That's the most fundamental development of something. You know, it's not even a sense because there's no essential organs involved, but it is something that's programmed into a cell, a single cell. Now we consist of, I lost count because, you know, since I went to college, which is now almost 40 years ago, back then it was 80 trillion cells. Now I think we're at 140 trillion, because those are just estimates. Yeah, but we know more today, so we can see more. So let's just work with this number right now. Please don't quote me on that. You'd have to Google that. So let's just say 140 trillion cells. Yeah, each of these cells has that sense. It's the most fundamental. Well, sense is maybe not even the right word for this. I'm not a biologist, but you guys know what I mean, right? Ability. You can call this an ability. Yeah. All right. And the more organized the cells become, the more interactive they become, the more organized they become, the more they collaborate with one another. Yeah. The more abilities they have. So if we just look at it from a biological standpoint, as soon as our cells start, you know, forming structures together, they can form tissues, and then tissues can form organs, glands, etc. Obviously, all that is somehow controlled by an intelligence within the cell. It's something that we call DNA. That's the material biological point of view. But the point that I'm trying to make is that the more organized organisms become, the more collaboration they have, the more interaction they have, yeah, the higher their abilities. So the more options they have to react to things. So as humans, we are an extremely high developed organism. From what we know, we're not higher developed animals. We're our own species because we show features that other species don't have. We share a lot of features and abilities that other species, especially mammals, have, but there are some distinct differences. So if we can just agree now on what we know about, let's say, the animal, plant kingdom and biochemistry and so forth, let's just focus on what sets us apart from all other organisms that we have here on this planet.
Jona, I was just thinking about it. It's Julianne speaking from Australia. We can make we have the ability to make choices. We have
Yeah,
the ability to make conscious choices.
yeah. But
Whereas,
why is that? Oh, yeah, sorry, go ahead. Whereas animals, yeah.
yeah, animals are instinctual, or, you know, live from that basic level of life and death and survival. But we actually have the ability to, with understanding ourselves, when we actually go into thinking and feeling into things, that we can make a conscious choice on our own.
Yeah, so animals have something, it's not exactly a hive mind. I mean, we're not talking about bees and ants and stuff like that, but there is something like, you know, just like how we discussed this when we had spiritual discussions, something like a group soul, there's a group consciousness, okay? And the choices that, let's say, a tiger has, okay, they are limited to the choices a tiger has. Yeah. The tiger cannot suddenly choose to do something like a monkey or a dolphin, yeah? So that's correct what you said, that we have
View
choices.
ourselves. Yeah, we can view ourselves. We can look back. We can look at our past. We can look at our choices. We can actually have that available to us. And what I was feeling into, I mean, when I was younger, I was also into all the sci-fi stuff. And I think when I was around 25, 26, I was really into wanting to know everything about everything. And I was reading books like magazines like Nexus and The New Dawn and stuff like that. And that gave me sort of an inclination towards looking at aliens, and I sort of had an attraction towards it. And so,
Yes, it's the great mystery, right? It's the great
yeah,
mystery.
so things showed up in my life, and I actually saw things. But also from a young age, I was always interested in astronomy, and I was always looking outside at the stars. And, you know, not having a television for many years, it was fun at night to actually watch the stars. And of course, when you do that, you do see things. The more you look outside at the night sky, the more chances there are of seeing things. And I think at the time I was really interested, actually focused. So my attraction towards that stuff brought that stuff in, I believe.
All right, so you're talking about alien encounters or experiences. Let's put this aside for a moment and move this to a little later point. We want to systematically build a foundation to have a discussion that is not just based on beliefs, but that is also based on what we know. Okay, yeah. So that way we can apply discernment. Yeah. So aside from affinities and attractions and so forth, this what you observed there is confirmed by anthropologists, for example. Yeah, we know from cave drawings that humans have done this, yeah, at least for 48,000 years. Okay, that they've looked into the sky, that they've seen things in there. Whether it was made up or not is irrelevant. But this yearning for something higher, this yearning to connect with something outside of our sensual world, that is also part of the human consciousness. And it's unique. Yeah, it's unique. We have not observed this in any other species, animal species on this planet. You said the ability to see ourselves or recognize ourselves, self-reflection. Yes, there's a certain level of self-reflection that can be observed in primates. Yeah, but it's not the same. Well, let's investigate that. Why is it not the same? Why is a gorilla recognizing him or herself in the mirror not the same as a human doing self-reflection, as we practice this here within the sacred self-healing community? Why is that not the same? I'll give you a tip. there are insights that follow self-reflection, isn't it? We have insights from self-reflection. We also gain insights from reflecting on the world, but what we call insight, yeah, the inner sight about something, that comes through self-reflection. And it does something not just to us as individuals, it also does something to our, let's say, tribe, our civilization, our society. There's one a huge big difference. It's so huge, and you all know it, that you probably never paid attention to it. But let's say even if a gorilla had a massive insight, like say, you know, just to stick with the topic here, had an alien encounter. What would happen with that insight when that gorilla dies?
It would die with a gorilla.
Yeah. How about humans?
As human beings, we can collaborate and talk together, and together we can gain higher insights into things and share things.
Yeah. We can talk.
Yeah.
And not just talk. And document. Yes, we can write things down. We can share.
Yeah.
We can learn from one another. Now, animals do learn from one another, the higher mammal species, and even birds and insects and so forth. Not insects, not so much, but they can learn from one another. But we can write this down, yeah, and we can create a legacy. Yeah, we can observe our own history. From all the species that we have here on this planet, we're the only ones that can do that. It's huge. We take all these things for granted, but in the bigger scope of things, in the 4 billion years that the planet Earth has existed, estimated, okay, and us here as Homo sapiens, you know, being here like for 100,000 years, those are huge evolutionary steps. We've developed language, and not just one. We've developed a highly sophisticated, our standards, way of communicating with another, documenting and exchanging. Now, as you all know, this is very often topic of my energy talks. I am, you know, for 15 years, almost 20 years, announcing that we are in the process of making in yet another shift in our consciousness as humans into an era where things such as abilities such as energetic sensitivity that many of us are discovering becomes the new norm. And all that comes with that. So it took us 48,000 years to develop some kind of idea that there's something outside of us, yeah, like a higher power or consciousness outside of us, expressed, or this is at least what we can prove, yeah. Back then, communicated through cave drawings that we can still look at today, to developing highly sophisticated languages, literacy, poetry, songs, all kinds of arts that have to do with expressing our insight. So we don't just have the ability to have an insight and to self-reflection, we also have the ability to express it. That's huge, guys. So let's look at it through that perspective. Let's ask the question again, what makes us human? What defines us humans? Certain set of abilities, certain tendency, and the striving for more. Yeah, this constant evolution, this constant improvement. We take it for granted, guys, but it is something to become aware of. Okay, like how long it even took to get here. Yeah, and now here we are. We're coming from all different parts of the planet and discussing, you know, the existence of species outside of this planet. And let's just have this sink in for a moment. Yeah, that in and of itself is very human to do. Yeah, I don't think the tigers would ever do that. Yeah. So let's make this something that is actually worthwhile spending our time with. Let's utilize those human qualities that we have and share and contemplate together. Let's go with the archetypes first. So those of us here who have always had an affinity to science fiction, literature, movies, etc., it goes hand in hand with our affinity for fantasy. You know, probably also like fairies and a Lord of the Rings type of kind of worlds, yeah, where there are, you know, some kind of superpowers that people have or can develop. And in the earlier days of our societies, there was like wizards and shamans. One of the interesting research that is coming forward here in the last 10 years, I think, is that anthropologists have discovered that the mere existence of a shaman within a tribe accelerated a tribe's or society's evolutionary development. Why is that? What's a shaman? Anybody know?
Hi, Jona.
Hi.
I'd like to take a swing at this.
Yeah.
I'm
Go for it.
guessing that having a shaman in the community would help people to become more aware of themselves and their connection to spirit, maybe.
Yeah, but I mean, we know all kinds of different shamans, right? And it comes. This is correct. The answer is correct. But how is that?
It
How
just
do they
shifts
do
the
that?
consciousness.
Yeah,
Oh,
the
just
Well,
shaman
I guess it's
what do they do?
recognizes that there's something greater than them that they're a part of, that they're connected to.
Yeah, and usually they also had that as a job, right? They would gaze at the stars all day for living, right?
cool
That was
job.
their job. Yeah, but no, I mean, but you know what I mean. It's just,
Yeah, sit in nature.
mhm. Yeah, but there's something important in that we are often not aware of. So shamans are obviously real. They're part of all early civilizations, and their function was you know, being medicine men, being, you know, something like a mixture of a therapist, some kind of leader in some ways, maybe an advisor to the leadership. You know, the you know. Chief of the tribe or whatever, but we have in different civilizations different types of shamanism. So if you will, we're looking at it from an anthropological point of view right now. You could say astrologers were, you know, the shamans of, like, say, Middle Europe in the Middle Ages. We know that astrology is much older than that, so, you know, all the way dating back all the way to the Vedics, and obviously the Chinese and the Persian and the Egypt civilization. So there's a lot of different forms of that, but they all have one in common, and that is that they have some kind of ability to bypass the normal thinking structure. They often, and not maybe in the sort of tribal shamanism league, but if we look at the last 6,000 years of our development, were more educated. They had the ability to write things down, yeah, which also isn't anything to take granted. I don't know the exact statistics, but literacy, okay, is not something, you know, it's like these numbers that we have worldwide of literacy. I don't know what it is. It's 80% or so. We've only had this for 100 years. Okay, like you really have to remember that up until like maybe the 1800s. Okay, it wasn't guaranteed that people, the masses, wouldn't be able to read or write. Yeah. So you could also conclude that part of this consciousness shift that we're experiencing now is partially related to the literacy levels that we have. Yeah, and then also the accessibility of information through internet, which also was very restricted even up until 50 years ago. When I was in college in the 80s, guys, a textbook in chemistry was anywhere between $500 and $1,000. That was a lot of money back then. Do you know what I mean? It's very limited. To get this information, you had to sit in libraries, and it depended greatly on where you lived. Yeah, if you lived someone out in the countryside, well, you know, your chances of becoming a great chemist or doctor or whatever was zero. You had to move to a larger city where there are more resources. So I'm just throwing this in here, guys, because it's really important in conjunction with understanding the human consciousness and the perception. And when we discuss aliens, a lot of it has to do with perception. So coming back to what shamans do, why do civilizations benefit from having shamans among them? And what did this do to early civilizations? And what does it still do for us? So, and this is a very interesting, psychology is very clear on this, that even if you had a crack as a shaman, right? Like someone who didn't have any higher abilities, the placebo effect that a shaman would bring to a tribe would lead to 40% higher healing. So science knows the placebo, yeah, us just imagining ourselves healthier, us just imagining something can heal or develop better, or somebody else is loving us, or, you know, whatever, we can get the mate of our desire, increases our chance by 30 to 40%. So psychology is very funny there, and they said even if it is if the shaman is a total quack, if the only ability they have is to say the right thing to a person in critical moments, then that would give the entire tribe, the entire family, the entire civilization an advantage over others, because it would create a mindset that would make the tribe believe that they can do something. So we're staying very neutral here. I'm not expressing any of my personal opinions. I'm just sharing with you where sort of the current stance is on, you know, how we even got here with our consciousness. So upon further investigation, you can find out that what shamans actually do, due to the practice of going into a meditative state or a flow state, as psychology calls it, they have access to higher perception. We're not going to discuss here what this higher perception is, because I have like probably 20 workshop recordings on that. Yeah, but the use of this, like how can you use this? What is the practical value of that for us humans? If you are able to see something beyond what your ego can see, you might want to write this down. if you can see, or if you can access information beyond what the ego can see, you are able to form new neural pathways and bypass old preformed neural pathways.
Jona, can you please repeat that again so we can write it down?
No, you don't have to quote me here, but did you get the gist? Okay.
Roughly, yeah. Just say it once more if you don't mind.
Yes. So if you develop or cultivate the ability to look beyond what the ego can see, and the ego is tied to our 5 senses, the body, mind, yeah, the biology of things. If you cultivate that, then you become able to form new thoughts, new insights, and thus form new neural pathways beyond the preformed, the pre-programmed ones. It is a very scientific way of expressing that, you know, if you can cultivate, every artist knows that, if you can cultivate your creativity, all right, then something happens to your cognitive function. You become inspired. You begin to open yourself up for all sorts of new thoughts and new perceptions.
It's also what makes us different, Jona, is that we have creativity, that we can express our creativity.
Yes, but you first, that's why psychology is so interested in it, because it wants to know what is creativity. You know, where does it come from? Yeah.
But in I don't know, in psychology, I would look at psychology as based in the material world. They don't.
Yeah, I agree.
They don't bring that shamanistic that into.
No, but there's a big crossover. There's a big development happening in psychology right now. Psychology is extremely interested in the development and utilization of consciousness. And there's multiple reasons for that. Most of it is money motivated, but some of it is genuine, you know, because we really want to understand how this works. Yeah, the main reason, if you're asking me why there's so much funds for this kind of research now, is because people are set to find out how they can get the human consciousness into machines, you know, like sort of that transhumanism, artificial intelligence idea. Yeah, and in order to do that, in order to quote unquote copy human consciousness, you first have to know how it works. Yeah, so that's just my 2 cents. Why there's suddenly so much money there to do this kind of research, and it's going fast, guys, and it's not going to take many more years until not just the existence of higher perception is proven, but also the mechanics of it. Something that you guys know I have dedicated my life's work to it, to develop systematic ways for us to tap into our higher perception, and with it also learn more about higher consciousness. But the core aspect of what I just said, what Mandy asked me to repeat, is that it allows us to form new neural pathways. And the materialistic, biological, scientific community sees that as, you know, like one way how they define creativity. Why is this important? Because we all know that we have barriers with perception. We know that a certain percentage of humans can cross those barriers, but we don't know why the others can't. And we don't know how to cultivate that. We don't know how to replicate that. We just have a few people like you and me, okay, who are not only interested in this, who also cultivate this, who exercise this every day, okay, who are really good at it. Okay, so what happens is when you know exactly what it is, yeah, that forms these kind of abilities in you, these quote unquote superpowers, well, then you can capitalize on them. You can, you know, maybe develop a machine, yeah, or a transplant, or some kind of enhancer. Yeah, so you guys all know we are headed into a time where human augmentation will be the norm in the future, in the near future, like 5 to 10 years from now. Augmentation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why there's so much money flowing into this. Obviously, we as sort of the hardliners of, you know, higher consciousness and higher power and so forth, don't really like hearing that, but you know, it works to our advantage as well, because it proves some of these things that we have experienced empirically. All right. So as soon as there's like this kind of research behind it, yeah, many of you can lose their fear of talking about, you know, your deeper inner experiences, because it will become the norm. It will become the norm. However, back to 2023. Okay, so we now know that this search beyond, yeah, this searching beyond is what forms new neural pathways, is what allows us to learn, is what allows us to tap into increased, enhanced cognitive functions of being a human. In other words, we all have the potential for these, for higher thinking, for higher learning, for higher perceiving. We're just now figuring out how to tap into this. When I say we, I mean us as society. You guys are pioneers of that. Because every single modality that I have created here in the course of the last 20, 25 years is for that purpose. Every discussion group, every workshop, every YouTube video, every online meditation, for that purpose, to show a way to tap into this for everybody. So there is a higher potential in us humans, and once we figure out how to access that, well, then we will all do it. It's just like with reading and writing. Yeah? First, it was just a secret science, and then it was heavily censored and guarded. Only a very few people in the world, you know, would go the scholarly route and would learn how to read and write. And only very few people were ever allowed to even read a book. Yeah, all the way to now the 21st century, where we don't even read books anymore. We just look it up on the internet, have some kind of app that translates it into some kind of audio language. So do you hear what I'm saying, guys? You need to be aware of all these things in conjunction with the alien discussion. And now comes the important question: why? Why have I chosen to go all this way back to, you know, the beginnings of Homo sapien consciousness development? It has to do with the history of humans and these current disclosures and discussions that you guys can see or observe in mainstream media. So now I want to point this back to you, the microphone. Yeah. What are some of the observations that you've made, let's say in the last 6 months? What are some of the topics within that sort of alien theme that you have noticed in media? Has anybody noticed anything there?
Yes, I have. I've been watching the different videos they're now showing of these tic-tac type craft or whatever that the Air Force is seeing, that type of thing as well more recently. Yeah.
So you're talking about Australia right now?
Well, I was actually watching something I think was in the States where they were discussing what they were seeing, unidentified aerial phenomena.
AUP, yes,
Because I thought, yeah, this tic-tac thing was a lot smaller than they said it was. I think they said it was 40 foot, which is the size of a large shipping container. And I thought, wow, when you hear tic-tac, you think it's small. But yeah, just yeah, that there's more of a conversation about
It's
this
more of a
type of thing.
conversation. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's footage, you know, people's like sort of phone footage,
Yeah.
even if it's just
Yeah.
snippets, even if you don't know if it's true or not. I asked you about your observations, and Diana, yes, I totally agree with your observation. Now we all have cookies on our computer, so if we watch one videos about unidentified flying objects or UAPs, we will get more. Okay, so we got to be careful there, because when we're navigating social media, then what we see there as sort of the canvas, okay, the background, and how many messages we get for the certain subjects that we have previously visited, that is no longer neutral. Yeah. So you guys know what I'm talking about, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
You get an echo chamber. On social media, you have an echo chamber. You look at one article or video about a certain type of shoe, and all of a sudden, all the messages that you'll see have to do with that shoe, and all the ads and all. Yeah. So keeping that in mind, obviously our subjective experience of a more discussion about UFOs can also be partially due to the cookies on our computer. I just want to be fair here. I just try to stay really neutral. Okay. But you're absolutely right. Who else observes this? Who else observes that there's a lot more discussion? I mean, that's just one tiny one that you just mentioned. Yeah. I mean, there's been tons of messages and articles on and footage from people seeing, you know, objects either in the sky or landing in their backyard, or some claim they have photos of aliens sitting in their backyard, and tons of that.
Oh, even programs. I don't know if it's on the History Channel or something, but something I haven't watched it all, but I've seen snippets of something called Skinwalker Ranch. And, you know, they're investigating, you know, different phenomena that's going on this particular ranch, you know, but it's even made it to, I think it's something like the History Channel. I thought, oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah, there's a huge series on, or not huge, but it's very acclaimed series made by Graham Hancock, Ancient Civilizations, also looking into the topic of aliens and the history of humankind. And there was, you know, tons of, obviously, for entertainment purposes, yes, series and movies and documentaries, Captain Blue, Project Blue Book, X-Files, and so forth, that carry some, you know, some partial truths or some kernels of truth, yeah, and formed some kind of, you know, entertainment industry around this. So that it's always been there, but lately there have been more sort of first account kind of reports, yeah. Here in the United States and Canada, for that matter, we had this discussion a few months ago when we had these quote unquote weather balloons, unidentified flying objects, cruising around here in the United States for a week until they shot them down, then later declared Chinese spy balloons, yeah, things like this. So there is a tendency right now, yeah, and I call this here a media squeeze, There is a tendency right now to gradually, and this has started about, I want to say like, it has started about 50 years ago, and it has amped up here in the last 10 to 5 years. With the COVID pandemic and the rise of conspiracy theories, and, you know, many of the conspiracies proven as true, yeah, no longer conspiracies, and the decrease in trust in governments and so forth, there's a lot more people now that are seeking truths, that are not necessarily just blindly believing everything that media is producing. We're in the middle of the media wars, is under scrutiny for heavily censoring information. all that in context with our governments, each and every single one of our governments, led by the UN, implementing more and more guidelines and emergency regulations for misinformation and disinformation. So we're obviously living in a time where disclosures are almost on the daily program, okay, but where it also becomes increasingly harder for us to know what is true and what isn't. But we can see that there is a tendency for more alien disclosures, be it through the American intelligence services that are either through fake whistleblowers or fake leaked documents discussing those, alien vessels, alien technology, alien crashes, etc. So I want you guys, whether you notice it yourself or not, from now on, from this day on, pay attention. There is an increase, a sensitivation of your attention toward the alien subject. We're still not talking about whether aliens exist or not. We're just still exploring the context here, okay? So we are in the middle of a time right now where governments have lost popularity. They no longer have the trust of the majority of the population. And as a consequence of that, they can no longer put rules or laws into play to through majority rule, through an ordinary democratic process. Instead, they need to have some kind of emergency protocols, emergency structures, and the resulting emergency powers in order to control people. All right, and this
Gosh, this sounds like COVID and the vaccines.
Yeah, I was just going to say this became first aware to the masses during the vaccines. During the pandemic. Okay, and this is now on a steep, inclining. It's like they're following a protocol, all of them. Okay, just in the last couple of weeks. You've seen things in Canada, you've seen things in France, you've seen things in England. Okay, these governments are no longer able to make rulings or to control the population through majority rules. They all used emergency acts, some kind of out of the ordinary, martial laws, as we used to call them, to get through with their agenda. This is the situation as of right now. So now we're entering the territory of mind control, and why I've talked so much about mind control in these last 5 years, and why I see self-mastery as a vital tool to protect yourself from mind control, and also, to become able to see solutions. Okay, so how does this work? Is anybody here who has investigated the subject a little bit? How does controlling the masses work? What are the tools that are being used to control the masses?
Only insofar as the media.
Yeah, but how does the media do that?
Through fear.
Fear.
Why?
Because as soon as fear's involved, people want a savior. People want someone to tell them what to do, how to think, how to feel, and how to react.
Do you know why that is?
It's control.
No, but do you know why that is
limited?
Okay, in the state of fear, the perception is limited, and what else? There's more that gets limited, that gets barred.
We don't feel we have a choice.
But why is that? What's the function behind that? That's part of being human, by the way. It's like as soon
Because
as
we
we
can't
talk about
see solutions.
External, yeah, something
no,
external.
something of a lower development, of a lower conscious level in us gets triggered.
You mean like fight or flight type thing?
Exactly.
Where you...
Yes. It's a different part of our brain. Yeah, it's actually not even part of our brain. It's the amygdala. It's a very fundamental, a very rudimentary way of cognition. In fact, it's actually wanted by nature that we don't think in situations where we are where we're under threat. We are almost regressing, not entirely, is a bit exaggerated, but we're almost regressing back to the function of an amoeba, of a one-celler. Fight or flight, yeah, is the same as eat or run away. Freeze is the state in between where you don't know what to do. That's the worst state. So, in order to control masses, there need to be two things. There's multiple other things that are being used. And anyone who has studied the subject a little bit, I mean, Goebbels, you know, Hitler's right-wing man, you know, wrote a book. The CIA used this book as their sort of textbook for mind control and augmented it in the 70s. So there's like tons of scholarly literature about this, how to control a human. It's very simple. And you experience it every day. We don't call it amoeba, we call it ego. Yeah. Because we're obviously more than just a cell structure. We have, you know, emotions and thoughts, and they all get, how psychology calls this, strooped. So as soon, stroop, S-T-R-O-O-P, please look this up, especially for those of you who have issues with narcissistic relationships. There's two things that need to happen. First, you need to, actually three, you need to lose your sense of individuality entirely, which means like you need to really feel bad about yourself. You know, maybe the fact that you can't do what you want to do, or that you're not good enough. Yeah? You have to have this constant inner voice that tells you that you're not good enough. This makes you lose your sense of self. Yeah. And then the outside sort of communicates to you that, yeah, you're not worth it. You're just scum. You're nothing. Okay. So that is a contributing factor in order to actually make a person do things that they would normally never do. Okay. But from a biological and psychological point of view, these other two things are, one, the induction of fear. Yeah, you got that right, Julian. And then the second one, the introduction of one solution. That's how Hitler did it. Yeah, create an enemy that induces fear. So every generation had their own apocalypse, right? So, and every single control structure or power structure at that time has used that fear to control. Whether it was the Roman emperors or the Catholic Church here in Europe, yeah, or the pharaohs or whatever. It's always the same program. Fear, and then on the other hand, one solution. Yeah, and that one solution can be something. In the old days, it was like, you know, if you were the emperor, if you were the pharaoh, or if you were the king or whatever, you know, yeah, I am the solution. I am anointed by God. I am the only one who knows what is good for you. And all you got to do is follow me blindly, and then you'll be fine. It's not that the people were dumb or anything. I mean, apart from the fact that they were illiterate, but it was that they were in a constant state of fight or flight. So if you keep a person in that state, fear, yeah, you know this really well. You study this here with me. Yeah, make the connections, guys. Yeah, if you were, hang on. if you were in a constant state here, right around 100, 120, you become subject to external control. You are no longer capable of controlling your thoughts, your emotions, or your actions. Okay, that's one aspect of that. Now here in these states, anger and specialness, you know, the 100s to 200s, you have a little more energy than fear, and you can actually muster something. So this is then being used, you know, for the middle class, or say for the upper class. Yeah, the middle class is being made angry, okay, so that they constantly protest against something, and the upper class or the ruling class is just being made special, okay, and that's how you can control, you know, the different hierarchies within a population. Yeah, because you got to give you need to have some kind of hierarchies. You need to have some managers. Do you know what I mean? And while they are still all being mind controlled, you know, the managers, sort of the higher ups, they get goodies. Yeah, they get tempted with pleasures. Yeah, the lower the masses, the sheep or whatever, they are being held in a constant state of fear. So with that said, guys, you need to understand that any discussion about aliens needs to be thoroughly investigated in regard to whether or not there's a fear induction taking place. Now, as someone who grew up with sci-fi and loves it, and you know, has thought a great deal about all these things, yeah, especially the ethics about that, I can tell you that, like Diana said in the beginning, it's more likely than not, yeah, that there are other species, yeah, in other sort of planets or systems or dimensions. And this is all just me saying this based on what I know. That's just based on what I know in science. Okay. My empirical experience is that I have seen something that, and now Cindy, we're getting to defining what is alien, that my mind could easily have taken for aliens. Had I not gotten that kind of information through this state of flow, as psychologists call this, yeah, the shamanic way, where I am not bound to the neural pathways that my ego has formed. So let's put all this together, guys. Let's exercise your superhuman powers here. Yeah, that's putting your consciousness to work. That's higher learning, guys. You put the whole context together. And now let's talk about aliens. What could aliens look like? What could they look like? What do you think? Maybe some of you have seen aliens. Then let us know in what context you've seen them, just so we understand which senses you've used to see them.
Well, I can say in the religious context, angels and demons.
Say this again. What were you finished with the sentence? Sorry. Angels
Yeah,
and
sorry. Angels and demons.
what about them? They could look like
That-
angels and demons. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, they could,
Okay.
if you were defining alien as
Or something that's not
something
human.
outside of human.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, you're right. I mean, we're just following the breadcrumbs here. This is a very valid conclusion. Angels and demons. Okay, keep going, guys. How else could aliens look like?
The little green men as they're depicted on in
Yes,
the
well, where
movies
does this come from? Yeah,
Yeah.
do you know?
Sorry, Jonah.
Where does this come from? The little green men.
Oh, movies and stuff.
Yeah, it's a radio series in the 50s. That was very popular here in the United States, that actually created panic because it was so realistic that people committed suicide because they actually thought that they were subject to alien invasion.
Was that the War of the Worlds? Was that one?
Well, I mean, there's many movies about the subject, but what I want to say with this is that the little green man, quote unquote, is an archetype. Yeah, it's an archetype that you know, was introduced in the 50s. There were other archetypes that were introduced around in the 50s and 60s. You know, the times of Roswell speculation and so forth. What are the other archetypes? How most people think alien might look like aliens.
The grays.
The grays,
big
can you
eyes.
describe them? The big eyes.
Yeah. Yep. The tall, skinny, big head, big eyes.
So ghost-like figures with huge big eyes, no hair and stuff like that.
Nothing.
Yeah, that's an archetype that was introduced in the 60s.
Yeah,
Anybody been to Roswell, by the way? Area 51?
No.
But you guys all know what Roswell stands for, or what Area 51 stands for? It's been suspected for 80 years that this is where a crashed alien, one or more vessels is being kept. Okay. Underground station from the US Air Force.
And the occupant.
Well, then the leaked documents that are giving sort of just hints away, but then get denied, which also is sort of the playbook of intelligence services, is that they died. Yeah. So obviously the US government has officially denied the existence of aliens or alien vessels in their possession. But then, you know, throughout the last, now almost 80 years, there's many leaked documents, and there's still a lot of documents under seal. So Roswell stands for the military base in which people suspected or do suspect that there are fragments of alien vessels kept for research since the 50s. There was an alien crash or a suspected alien crash in 48 in South America. There's a lot of different incidences since then. That's just, you know, because this is when we started recording these kind of things. It doesn't mean that they were there before. It just means that it's recorded, and that there's a lot of different, that's the suspicion, okay, a lot of different vessels that have crashed into the Earth's atmosphere, and that they're being kept and researched for roughly 80 years. Most of it under the supervision of either the American or Russian. Actually, Hitler Germans were really, really big on not just occultism, but also alien research. Makes sense, right? Because if you want to be a world dominator, you need to know how to gain superpowers. So here in the United States, there are places where one Air Force base in particular, where all this research is being kept. And it's been a constant discussion with every change in administration with every president when and if those documents are becoming public. And it's subject of current discussions everywhere because they're being documents leaked right now. Okay, what do these documents show or say? I'm not going to walk you through all of the stuff that is out there on the internet. First of all, that's not my job. Second of all, that's something that is impossible nowadays. Okay, but I can tell you that 99.9% of what I have seen, even in documentary series and mystery series and whatnot, work with archetypes of aliens. Little green men, grays. What other archetypes of aliens are there out there, guys?
There's the reptilians.
The reptilians. What else? The Nordics. Yeah, the tall, blue-eyed, white-haired people. Game of Thrones has some of these elements built in, by the way. What other archetypes? I mean, where do zombies fit in, guys? Zombies could also be an alien, couldn't they? I mean, it's pretty prevalent in our societies in the last 20 years. Those are all archetypes. Any other names or any other theories that you are familiar with or that you've heard?
The Pleiadians, the Arcturians. I think I've heard Saturnians.
Syrians. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Syrian. Yep.
Those
yes.
are all other planets, right? Pleiades is a constellation. Saturn, you know, Sirius. The other planets, yeah.
Yep.
Okay. What do you make out of all this? Where does this information come from? So the discussion here among the intelligence services and government agencies is all about alien technology. Why? Because alien technology grants you an advantage, right? Just like how shamans, you know, granted you an advantage for your civilization. If you had advanced technology, well, then at least that's the current belief here of our military industrial complex. Yeah. So maybe that's the reason why they keep it a secret. I don't know. I'm just laying it all out for you. So as far as the government is concerned, there's not really a lot of leaks about their abilities or what they can do, what they don't do, what their intentions are. Nobody said anything about intentions, right? There's only this sort of hush hush about technologies, and a lot of people suspect that there's, you know, that some of the, you know, our Teflon pans and our iPhones and blah blah blah, that's all based on alien technology. I'm just going to lay it out. I'm not going to say if it's true or not. Okay, but then there's the other faction that, like the ones that you were mentioning right now. So the reptilians, the Nordics, the Pleiadians, the Syrians, the Saturnians. So that information is retrieved somewhere else. Where do these kind of alien archetypes come from, Cindy?
I would say Hollywood.
Yeah, the people that talk about it, what do they base that on? Where does this come from?
There's
Well,
new
I
agey
hear-
stuff.
Yeah.
Sorry. New agey stuff like galactic councils up there that are benevolent beings in spaceships that are trying to save the world.
Yeah.
All this sort of stuff.
Thank you. Yes, so that's new agey stuff. Okay, and there's an intention there. There's no talk of technology, right? With these kind of alien species, there's only like, yeah, they they're our guardians, and they came here, in contact, certain special people, that can communicate with them directly, and they give
it's
them
almost,
orders.
sorry, I was just going to say, it's almost a bit like they're replacing religion.
Yeah, it's
With
fantasy.
some other higher power that's up there guiding, and
Those are fantasy archetypes. They all look like
Mm.
elves or trolls. They all look like sort of the Tolkien worlds, Lord of the Rings. Take note of that, guys. We talked about science fiction, fantasy. Okay. As an archetype of our psychology, the desire to develop some kind of superhuman abilities, wizards, and all that. I'm not saying it's good or bad, I love it too. But I know that most of the stuff that I'm seeing there is fantasy. I know I'm not believing in it, I just like it. I like the costumes, So I want you to have a very clear head on your shoulders and be able to discern what it is that is being conveyed to you, what the source of that is, and what the intention behind that is. We've discussed what the intention could be of governments to leak or to induce the population with the idea that there are aliens that have advanced technology, in other words, that are superior to us, seen from an industrial military complex point of view, that could conquer us like Independence Day at any time. Yeah, we discussed the intention behind that. Can anybody summarize that? What would or could that be? Why would our sorry?
Fear and control.
Fear and control. So there could be a playbook, that is being played out, just like with the pandemic. But there's just the next level of fear that's being induced, and if you categorize all sorts of fears, well, the fear of losing your money, the fear of losing your loved one, the fear of losing your health, or the fear of losing the whole civilization, which do you think is worse?
Civilization.
Yeah.
Our civilization.
Yeah. I mean, in between, we have the whole Earth Changes agenda, right? That is inducing fear that the planet is going to die. We have that in between. If you were 18, 20 years old today, and you turn on TV or scroll on social media, what is the main messaging that you get? Spell it out, guys. Use your common sense. Use your higher thinking. What is the message that we are getting bombarded with?
The planet is dying.
Yeah.
The planet is dying. What else?
We are killing the planet.
Yeah, okay, the planet is dying. Okay, we're bad.
Yes.
All of us, we're all bad. Okay, what else?
There's no security.
Yeah, we just talked about all these things. There's no security. There's nothing that you can trust in, nothing that you can count on. Nobody really cares about your health. Okay, the planet is going to get taken over by some kind of civilization soon. You are powerless.
Yeah.
Yeah, you should think just about your pleasures, gaming, pornography. You should only be focused on material values, so that you do not connect within, so that you do not reflect within, so that you do not have insight, so that you do not look beyond what your ego can see. If you were 18, 20 years old And there's a lot of 18-year-olds out there in the world that are waking up to a world like this, where they're being told that everything is going to go to shit. And no matter what they do, it makes no difference. And all they have left is gaming, drugs, porn. Don't even engage in physical relationships anymore. Okay. So we've just uncovered that any kind of agenda that propagates aliens in context with technology most likely has the purpose to install fear in us so that emergency protocols, emergency power structures can be put in place so that we have no choice but to comply. And in that stripped place, yeah, we're no longer capable of higher thinking. We will not just comply. We will gladly do so. Why? Because we're being told that that's the only solution. Okay? That's one side. What about the other side? What about the Pleiadians and the Galactic Council and the Violet Ray and all these kind of things? All these alien trans-dimensional beings, okay, that contact special chosen ones. Yeah, some of us are star seeds. You know, we have been conceived, you know, as sort of some kind of trans-dimensional mixture, yeah, of an alien race, you know, taking on a human body, and that's our destiny. Yeah, but it's only very few chosen ones. What's the agenda there? And the main message of this new agey alien agenda is everything's going to be fine. The aliens are here to rescue us. They're going to bring us into a new world. We don't need to worry about anything. And who just said this, Diana? Almost like a new religion, right? I agree.
Actually, that thought just popped into my head as I was, hadn't thought about that before, but it is almost like that. There's a higher power there that's controlling things. Yeah.
But it's benign, right? It's like like a big father. I'm so glad that you just had a new thought that you didn't think before.
No, I did.
I have dedicated my life's work to helping you guys, facilitating that you have new thoughts. Thoughts that you thought yourself on your own. I'm showing you the way how to do this. Okay, so do you recognize a pattern here? We got the military industrial government control, you know, new world order, Khazarian mafia, Rockefeller, Council of Rome. Okay, this is all one category. Promoting aliens now in conjunction with technology and war. The materialistic view. Then we have the Galactic Council, the Pleiadians, the Syrians, etc., transdimensional beings that are here to rescue us. And we don't need to worry about anything. We just need to go with the flow. We don't need to make decisions on our own. Just need to worship them.
You've got the two darknesses is what you have.
Thank you. Good job, Cindy. Do you guys all know what I'm talking about or what Cindy's talking about? I'm trying to find like a slide here for you that I can show you. You're familiar with this. The two darknesses. The one darkness that pulls you out of yourself into some kind of imaginary, fantastical, Luciferian alternative reality. where you're being induced with the idea that you don't need to have control because you're so special.
So, Jona, have you got a slide there that we are looking at?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's an
I
old
can't
slide.
see
You
it.
guys all know this. Yeah, it's
Okay,
there's
thanks.
tons of videos, and I mentioned it many times, Mandy. It's about the duality of darkness, the nature of darkness.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay.
Yeah, it's
That's kind
always
of
the
new to
same.
me. Thanks.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's let me see if I can find it for you here.
That's all good. I'm trying to get my head
But
around it, but I'll keep listening.
so the
Thanks.
Luciferian on one side, okay, that is the fantastical, that is the agenda to pull you out of yourself, to lose your sense of self, and not even wanting any kind of control, self-mastery. Who needs self-mastery? You know, it's all good. If you just go with the flow, everything's going to be fine. Yeah, because you're going to get rescued, right?
Mm.
The
Yeah.
elves or the Pleiadians or whatever, they're all going to come to rescue you in the end, you know, or Captain America or whatever. Those are all archetypes. Well, Captain America is a mixture of both. Let me see. Yeah, it's just the traits of darkness, Mandy here. But the important part about this is to recognize where we're standing with this. Okay, so it pulls us into this, the specialness, the mystification of everything. It makes us dependent. It promotes escapism. Yeah, it promotes blind faith. It externalizes our powers, and you know, has sort of yeah, sort of a blindedness. Yeah, like a religion. Yeah, or a cult almost. We call this Luciferian. That's the one side of the dark forces. And then the other ones that here on the materialistic side, yeah, that promotes narcissism, entitlement, that promotes any kind of exclusion and separateness, exploitation, you know, this whole like human slave race and so forth, that whole idea. Also specialness, a different kind of specialness. You have to, like, dog eats dog, you know, you have to be like really tough and can't have any emotions, and you can't really care about humanity, yeah, because that's weak. Yeah. It promotes greed. You know, the what are they called? The seven deadly sins. Seven deadly sins, is that what it's called? Yeah, you find them all here: betrayal and so forth. So that's a materialistic worldview. Those are worldviews that are promoted by darkness, that pull a person into, or makes a person get lost in themselves. Okay, so with the materialistic kind of darkness, the harmonic kind of darkness, you get pulled into the material of things. Yeah, yeah, into the ego. Yeah, and with the Luciferian side of darkness, you get pulled into the fantastical, that pulls you outside. You get lost outside of yourself. In both cases, you lose your soul. Yeah. Whether or not you can retrieve it, that's, you know, and how, that's a different discussion. So when you're standing in the light, okay, and this is where New Age gets this wrong. This is also how you can truth test any kind of, you know, spiritual teacher or whatever. Yeah. It must propagate something that we call universal law, namely the power of choice. That you have a choice no matter what. Any moment, any second, any millisecond, do you have a choice? Why? Because you have a consciousness. Every human has a consciousness. Every human can observe and reflect on their own physical sensations, their own emotions, and their own thoughts. Some better than others. Okay, that's the kind of training that I am offering, yeah, to get you really good at this so that you can make really good choices for yourself. Yeah, but it also has to come with the ability to discern truth, because without truth, you can still make bad choices, bad conscious choices. And this happens to us. Even if you're a truth seeker, you know, you sometimes make conscious choices. They're still not based on truth, but you need to learn to forgive yourself for that, because at the time being when you made that choice, you know, you had a certain level of consciousness, a certain energetic state, and a certain level of knowledge, okay, that provided you with the information needed. Yeah, so truth is obviously dependent on a few factors, but without the insight that you actually have a choice, that cannot be truth. So anybody who tells you have no choice is wrong, is untrue. Okay, why? Because every state that you could be in, every possible state that you could be in, yeah, does not just come with these two all or nothing, black or white, good or bad, light or dark. It always also comes with at least one more option. Do you guys know what this third option is? What's the third option? That's the code breaker for you guys. That's a shamanistic modality that I'm teaching you here right now. How do you break the duality of 3D? By realizing that it's an illusion. And how do you realize that? By seeing that you always have more than just the two options that your ego displays for you. Your ego always displays just, you know, the best ever or a total failure. All or nothing, black or white. What's the third option? What's always the third option? Guys, that's Aristotle. That's like classic human training of the mind and the foundation of all perception research. The third option. It's so simple that we forget it. The third option, that's just a minimum. But all I'm saying to you is like, it's never true when all you can see is black and white. That's never true. It can't be true, because there always is at least a third option, and that is none of the above. That's not just some dialectic mind game that I'm playing with you, because there's a reason why I picked this kind of graphic here. It's old and it's hard to read and all that. Forget that. It's not the point. The point is a different one, is that you understand that the only way to stay in the light is by not getting pulled into either extreme. And that's your third option. Yes, it's a possibility that you die tomorrow, but could also not happen. Yes, it's a possibility that we get taken over by aliens and the whole planet gets destroyed. Yeah, that would be really bad. But it's also possible that it doesn't happen. It has to do with claiming the freedom of your own thinking. Yeah. And that's where you can find, you know, these things such as insight and healing and clarity and peace, abundance, wholeness, unconditionality. And one of the ways we train this, guys, especially here in the Sacred Self-Healing community, is through empathy. Why empathy? Well, empathy is a human trait. Okay, we're all born with empathy. It's needed for survival for the first 18 to 24 months of our life. But then something happens in people. Okay, so there's psychological conditions and mental illnesses or mental disorders where empathy gets distorted or shut down and so forth, usually trauma, that then lead to like forms of narcissism and other personality disorders. But there's also the other extreme, the overdeveloped, unmanageable empathy. where you are unable to hold yourself, to feel yourself, because you're constantly feeling everybody else's. I know that many of us come from that place. So everything, it doesn't matter what area of your life, whether it's aliens, or whether it's God, or whether it's love, or I don't know, success, whatever abstract thoughts and goals and values you have, they work within this scheme here in 3D. 3 spheres, 3D. Now, some people give darkness a name. What are some of, I just use 2 names, Lucifer and Ahriman. Ahriman is the old Persian name for, basically for Satan. What other names do you know? What other archetypes of darkness do you know?
Lucifer.
All right, so besides Lucifer and Ahriman, Lucifer and Satan, what other names for darkness do you know? Or have you heard?
Are you talking about like selfishness and coldness?
I'm talking about names that humans
Just
give
names.
to dark entities or darkness.
Okay. Demons.
Demons. Okay, there you have the demons that you mentioned earlier. What else?
The devil?
Devil and
Devil, yeah.
succubi and
So different types of demons. Okay. That's something that you can like pay a little more attention to. We're talking about archetypes, just like how we talked about archetypes with aliens. You got to be aware of that these archetypes that are being displayed here, this is also a form of induction. There's something that's been projected onto you. Okay. What personifications of the light, the good guys, do we have?
Angels, God, divinity.
What do they look like? How do we, what kind of image do we make of them in our minds?
Pure, white, flowy.
Yeah, it's right, Linda. Thank you. Stay with it. It's very important. You investigating your subconscious right now. You're reading out the programs that were written into your consciousness. Those were not your thoughts. Those are implemented ones. Archetypes are implemented thoughts. I'm not saying that any particular person or government agency or someone did that, because some of that, that's why we call them archetypes, happens through this sharing of insights throughout generations, yeah, through the collective subconscious.
Religion.
So we associate everything that is sort of flowy and white and what? Halo, that has a halo, right? Or wings, right? Kind of like fairy types or elves in the Tolkien universe.
Jona, can I just add something here, if you don't mind?
Well, I'm asking you guys, so go for it,
Okay.
please.
So no, it's not really on topic, but it kind of is in a way, in that I found that a couple of times where I'm connecting to source and I feel like I get this trickster energy coming through that's white and pure, and it's not really, it's darkness in disguise. And so I,
Yeah,
I
that's the next
don't
level.
know.
You have to question it. Yeah, when something, when you use your higher perception, I mean, the subject of many other discussions that we had, you need to use discernment. Because what if the devil doesn't come with horns and a
Exactly.
spiky tail? If you want to understand darkness, you're going to have to, first and foremost, acknowledge its existence. And then you have to investigate the traits. What are the traits of darkness? Now, some of you here have religious upbringing. You can go and look at your ancient scripture. It's very clearly defined. All other ancient scriptures do the same, and it's very similar. The traits of darkness are described as trickery, as lying, as deceiving, as projections, temptations, all the ego stuff that you suffer from all day long. Degradation, torture, compulsion. That's darkness, guys. But especially lies and deception. And the most evil form of darkness on the human consciousness is self-deception. What are the traits of, let's call them light beings, or, you know, beings of the light?
Special?
Say that again, please.
Special? Sorry, are you talking about the negative self-darkness?
No, I'm talking about the traits of light beings, of the good
Sorry.
guys, of like what
Loving.
traits do they have? What's the nature of them?
They're loving and they're caring, compassionate,
Compassionate,
Honest
accepting,
honest, neutral in a way, forgiving, unconditional. So now let's bring it back to aliens and conclude here. Okay. So what do you guys think now? Do aliens exist? Okay. One more thing that we haven't covered yet. Obviously, we assume that everything is 3D. Why do we assume that? Anybody know? I mean, Cindy doesn't believe in it. She said that we are multidimensional. But let's just go with the mainstream opinion about humans. Currently, the mainstream opinion about humans is that we're 3D only, right? That we're a body. And some believe we're a body maybe with a soul. The soul part being like not so 3D, but we believe that the world that we're in, the universe, and including ourselves, and for most people, yeah, especially Elon Musk and people like that, you know, that our consciousness is also 3D, that it's some kind of matter, materialistic. Why do you think humans believe that?
Because it's easy to prove. We can see it and touch it and feel it.
Yeah, it's the only thing that we can really sense with our five senses. With our five senses, right? We have more than five senses, but that's something that we can all agree on, right? I mean, we can't agree on colors. We can't really agree on temperature. We're not really that good with our senses, but we have a consensus about it. Yeah. When we look at clouds, we can say, oh, do you see those clouds over there? Yeah, somebody else will see clouds too. Okay, that's a consensus. But the example that I've made on many occasions, that's often used for sociology and psychology to describe, you know, what happens to a civilization if they're exposed to a higher developed civilization / aliens without a framework, that they will not be able to see it. And that's the example with the Native Americans, how they responded, because we have documents of that, when Columbus's ships arrived And it took them, you know, a few days to actually get onto shore. So they saw the ships and they saw the sails, and they thought those were cloud formations because they had no other framework for it. The framework was that these white, big, pointy things that they saw must be just some weirdo clouds. And didn't do anything. Why? They didn't perceive it as a threat or anything. They had no framework for that. There was nothing in them that told them, oh, there are some Spanish and some Portuguese guys with weapons that are coming to conquer you and kill you all. Nothing in them told them that. So what happens to us now? We believe that there's 3D. Why? Because we are limited in our perception to our 5 senses. It's a consensus that we're limiting us to those 5 senses. This has not always been the case, by the way. 2,000 years ago, 4,000 years ago, people were not limited to their 5 senses. They had much more sort of magical, natural thinking. They could tune into nature spirits. They could see, you know, entities. They were much more connected in that way to the spiritual world. But we kind of lost that on the way. This happened right around the 15th century. Where everything turned into just science, 3D, only what is matter. Yeah, we have Newton has created a set of laws that define what reality is, and that is based on 3D. Aerodynamics, electromechanics, thermodynamics, mechanics. That's why we believe in 3D only. Does this mean that there's nothing outside of 3D?
No.
Thank you. No. Even if you can't prove it, but it doesn't mean that. You can't conclude that. You can't say just because, you know, like, what is that with dogs? They can only see certain colors, right? And cats. It doesn't mean those other colors don't exist. Yeah. Or just because we can only see this, what we call the visible spectrum of light, doesn't mean that other frequencies of light don't exist. They exist, but we just can't see them. So luckily, our science has developed so far that it can say that now without cringing. Okay, yes, there is things such as radiation, yeah, such as, you know, light frequency and certain electromagnetic energy that we cannot see, that we cannot perceive with our 5 senses, but we know they exist. How do they know they exist? Because they're measurable. Yeah, they're measurable. Okay, here in this community, we are a collection of people who have what I defined as energetic sensitivity. That's, by the way, a word that I created 20 years ago, energetic sensitivity. We are perceiving energies and we're perceiving them consciously. We can perceive the effects on us, but we cannot necessarily prove them. Right? I mean, that's why we're here. We're trying to understand this better. We're trying to investigate this. We're trying to get a handle on that, yeah, to master that, because we know that there's something there that we cannot see. Now, what has that done to you guys psychologically in the past or growing up? How did that make you feel?
Outcast. We were the crazy ones. We were the black sheeps.
So it made you feel misunderstood, sorry, not heard. It made you feel like you don't belong.
What I was
Correct.
experiencing, yeah. What I was experiencing was different to others, so it made me question my sanity, or
It made you
if
question
I'm
yourself.
like everyone else, and and in a very low
How do you see
energetic.
this now?
Oh, it's a gift to actually be able to, not a gift, I don't mean it in that way. I mean, like, it's a blessing because that gives me the ability to see that everything is not black and white, that everyone's experiences are different.
Okay, so you have developed a more neutral way of a framework of life, right? Not everything is black and white, not everything is this or that. What else? What else has it enabled you to investigate? What has it inspired you to look for, to seek, to investigate, to explore?
That I can have my own insights, that I can look into things and develop my own insights and about things.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's okay, and it can also change, and it can get more and more.
Okay, so you've executed a higher function of being human. You've explored.
Also opened up doors and space for connecting with other people on such a positive way and with such hope and an aspiration for more.
Yeah. And the willingness to go into truth, and the willingness to give everybody else a choice, and the willingness to forgive, and all these traits of light that we have discussed earlier. It has prompted you to investigate this part of you. Okay. And this is the reason why I suggest that we take this way as humans, because as we are doing this, okay, we are breaking free from our preset frameworks. We're beginning to explore something, yeah, that is clearly there, but that we don't have a framework for. So this is a problem that we're all experiencing here in this day and age, is that we do not have a framework yet for this new paradigm that I always talk about, or others. We don't have a framework for that yet. And we're all kind of waiting that science is catching up. The problem with science is, and many of you might be aware of this, is the funding. I mentioned earlier that there's a lot of money now flowing into consciousness research, but with a big but. With the intention, obviously, to decode consciousness so that we could, well, program it, maybe preserve it for eternity, maybe, you know, to like copy ourselves into some kind of computer, and that when we die, we can download it back into a new body, right? That's very archaic. I'm not saying that I want this. I'm saying this is where the money is coming from. It's a very materialistic framework where this is coming from. And then you have the other extreme. You have the New Age and the culty and the religious people. Now they say, don't worry about anything. You don't need to do anything. You know, you just need to be nice and, you know, sacrifice and suffer and just wait. All's gonna be fine. And if not here in this world, you're gonna get your reward in the afterlife. Okay. I like that you guys are having your own thoughts about this right now, okay? Because all this is just supposed to inspire you. I told you in the beginning I wasn't going to be here to tell you what's right or wrong, okay? I'm going to teach you how to fish, not give you fish, okay? So now you have a little bit broader framework. I've just, like I said earlier, used shamanistic techniques. Yeah, that's what code breaking is, okay? So I lay out the existing framework. I show you where that framework is limited, and then I show you ways how to get out of that, but on your own accord. And when we now look at the subject of aliens, guys, there's a few things that you need to consider. Number one, if you are confronted with a picture or image of aliens that taps into the archetypal depiction of aliens, I would be very suspicious. Do you guys understand how I mean this?
Yeah.
Why should there be, in this whole entire universe, with all its different dimensions, why do we assume that aliens look like us, for one, or just a variation of us? Yeah, with legs and arms and heads. Why? Can you tell me why? Because it's all we can imagine.
Because that's how life on Earth developed.
Yeah, it's a 3D view.
And everything has two eyes and a nose and a mouth.
Yeah, yeah, it's dumb, really. It's not very sophisticated. It's like we're the Native Americans, that are looking at interdimensional stuff, and we're like, oh, it's clouds. Yeah, we can't see it. Okay, so it's very likely that if we're dealing, if there are aliens, and it's more likely than not that if they have made it here to this Earth, either in some kind of physical 3D form or in spirit, okay, that they're more advanced. Why am I saying this? Because we can't do that yet. Okay. But do they really have to have these flying saucers? And would they actually really have flying saucers? I mean, come on. We are already further developed than flying saucers. At least we have cool looking rockets now. Do you understand what I'm saying? In all these stories, guys, there's sort of a thread, and that thread is extremely limited. It's ego perception. It's all just based on what we can imagine. Yeah, if somebody comes along and says, I've met this alien species that's some kind of fog, and they communicate through some kind of light. There are some really cool movies out there that transported that. It's very, very cool. You know what? That's much more realistic. Or, and this is why we're here, that other species are no longer bound to 3D, or never were bound to 3D. Yeah? Have a higher dimensional being that is no longer bound to form and time and space. We have no framework for that. At least the normal person here on this planet doesn't have a framework for that. Except for those of us who've actually explored those other dimensions of their consciousness. And Mandy, now we come into the points that you made twice. Yeah, things, personal experiences that you had when you tune into something. That is your inner world that you're navigating there. And there we can see something, and there we can see other beings, and there we can see what, by what we have found as a valid definition for aliens, could be aliens. Other beings that are not human. And we can even go a step farther. If we believe that we are a soul, which is in essence a spirit being, with a 3D hull, with a 3D body, okay? In other words, when we die, we return back to our pure spirit form. Well, then we also need to augment our framework for what is human, right? I mean, do you guys realize how complex that subject is? I personally do not believe that when we have encounters or first contact with aliens, that they're going to be little green men or grays with huge big black eyes. I've seen all sorts of beings. unimaginable for our ego mind. And they're all around us. They're always there. Just because we can't, quote unquote, see them doesn't mean that they're not there. So my suggestion to you is that you let go of this very limited mindset, this fear-based mindset that you have been indoctrinated with, and imagine aliens as some kind of like mean goblin race from some kind of technocratic planet, okay, that is here to harvest us, yeah, to a more sophisticated version, and just accept the fact that it is likely that there are other beings there. Yeah. And it is also likely that there is a possibility for us to connect with them. Why? Because if you believe that you have a soul, then that means you believe that you have a higher dimensional existence. And if you have a higher dimensional existence, that also means that you can communicate with other higher dimensional beings. Mm. My intention with this workshop was to sharpen your tools, to teach you how to use more discernment, and to be prepared for what is to come. You're going to be told these things through media. They've already put all these emergency eggs for alien encounters, yes, into their bills. The game plan is already playing out, the playbook. So just real quick before I let you go, what do you think you need to do? You need to think and you need to feel when that day comes where suddenly all over the news you see pictures of some kind of alien invasion. What should you do?
Try and stay out of fear and don't accept that there's only one answer.
I love it. See, isn't it that you have never had exposure to sci-fi and fantasy, Linda? Yeah, because a lot of times it makes it a lot easier than to go to common sense. Stay in your common sense, guys, but your higher common sense. Think of the third option. It is a possibility that none of that is real, that they are doing this on purpose, that there's a deception going on for a different agenda that you're not supposed to see. You're supposed to, it's like an illusionary, like a magic trick. You're supposed to only focus on the one thing that lowers your willingness, yeah, to think your own thoughts and to make your own choices, and not the other thing. So my tip and also my plea to you is always look at what you cannot see. Always ask yourself, what am I not looking at right now? Where is my attention being hijacked to, away from? We had a session today, mental heart fusion. Okay, a typical mental heart fusion session, and those of you who were there had your own insights about what is distracting you from going into this place of deeper connection with your heart and your mind. And we all agreed it's always the same: distraction, distraction, distraction.
Yeah.
The first thing you need to do, guys, is to go into inner connection and apply all the things that you've learned here. And then ask, who benefits from this? Where is this information coming from? What kind of agenda is this propagating here? Is this materialistic or is this like fantastical? Oh, is this Ahrimanic or is this Luciferian? Or maybe it's neither. It's a possibility. I'm not saying there's no aliens, but I can tell you with 100% security that they're gonna play this book. For the purpose of putting emergency structures into play. So your biggest treasure as a human is the ability to think your own thoughts, to have your own insights, to determine your own will, to discern truth, and to go into love. Never let anybody take that away from you. That's how we lose our soul. Okay. All right, guys, I'm gonna have to let you go. I think
Thank you,
that we
Jona.
should probably continue this discussion. Okay, I really wanted this to be just what it was, a discussion.
Thank you, Jona, and thank you, everybody. That was very cool.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank
thanks.
you.
That was
Right.
great.
Thank you so much for coming, for asking questions and so forth. It's probably going to take me a while to edit it and to upload it. I really want people to come live. You know, I don't have a problem with accommodating doing recordings. I will, but I have to do this on my own timeline because it's very time consuming. You know? So thank you for being here live. You know, and everybody else has to wait. Okay. Cool discussion. Awesome. All right. Bye bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Good night.